Muy bien. Y voy a grabar. I'm going to keep now recording for the folks who are busy taking care of little people, etc. And will be watching later. Okay. Buenos días, ¿cómo están todos? ¿Están bien?
Bien.
¿Están bien? Bien, lunes. Hoy es el primero de febrero. It rhymes. Hoy es el primero de febrero. This is the only date we can give as the, not as a counting number, but as primero. Hoy es el primero de enero. You know, I might do, that's probably a good vocab thing for me to do at some point, is the ordinal, meaning the order numbers versus the counting numbers. As a matter of fact, we may just start with that real quick now. Para que sepan, let's start with a really quick lesson. Algo fácil, something easy. Es vocabulario, es vocabulario. Muy bien. Clase, vamos a empezar con números. We're going to begin with a really short lesson. Then we'll go off into any questions you might have on reflexives before you start your practice. One moment, before I get started with that, I do want to put up on the screen what you will need. What you will need in terms of materials is this set of questions. So if you printed it out, or if you saved it as a tab and you bring two screens up, one screen with this and the Zoom, however you do it. I mean, no main push. That does not matter to me how you do it. But if you have this printed and set off on a different table or something, you may want to look for that. Those are the questions you will be using to ask each other questions in just a little bit. Pero vamos a empezar. Porque hoy es el primero de febrero, as today is the 1st of February, and it's one of those few days that we can use that word primero, right? Every other date when we talk about ordinal numbers. In English, a lot of times we'll say it's the 2nd of February, it's the 5th of February, it's the 10th, 12th, 20th, okay. But in Spanish, the only time they use that ordinal number for a calendar date is the word primero. Okay, these are called los números. Ordenales, creo, I think ordinal. En los números, ordinal numbers. Ordinal numbers just means they're not counting numbers. Counting numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Counting what you count up to. But ordinal numbers tell you what order things are in. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So here's what you need to know. We only really use ordinal numbers in conversation in Spanish to give, and I should say it, I should phrase it this way, for 1st through 10th. That's it. Okay. There are special words for 1st through 10th, not for calendar, but you know, he's the 10th guy in line, that kind of 10th. But once you get to 11th, they will not use a special number after that. After you leave the word 10th, they start using the counting numbers. Okay, so that's what happens. There are special ordinal numbers for 11th, 12th, 13th, but they're really kind of only used for really formal writing, not in conversation. Or for example, if you're citing like a scientific journal and it's got 15 volumes, you know, and you're typing, oh, you have to look in volume the 15th volume. Then they've got some special numbers for that for formal writing, but nobody uses it for speaking. So I'll be honest with you, those ordinal numbers that go past 10th I even have to look them up because nobody uses them speaking. And oh yeah, it's that word because nobody uses them when they talk. But here they are. They are kind of common for first through 10th. So you already know primero. See, primero, first. Now that one often gets shortened to this word. It gets shortened to primer if it's in front of a masculine singular noun. Okay. So what does that mean? That means if we want to say Ana es la primera chica en su clase. She's the first girl in the class. Es la primera chica. Just primera, right? But if I want to say el señor Pérez es el primer hombre, I need to shorten primero to primer. Okay, so actually this word primero is a lot like uno shortens to un, or bueno shortens to buen, or malo shortens to mal. Primer is one of those words. There is no strict rule for which words drop that o in front of a masculine singular noun, but you just have to kind of know which ones do. It's kind of a short list of words, but you know, primer is one of them. Primer. Okay, primer. Primero, segundo, second. And of course, that will have, you know, segunda, feminine form. There you go. Bien, segundo. Tercero will be third. This, like primer, can be shortened to tercer if it's in front of a masculine singular noun. So, you know, these shortenings of primer and tercer only happen if it's in front of a masculine singular noun. So you would never say el señor Pérez es el primero hombre, es el primer hombre, right? Jorge es el tercer jugador. George is the third player, you know, del equipo, on the team, okay? Tercer jugador. Okay. Cuarto. You know this word cuarto as also a noun that can mean room. Well, it kind of serves double duty. Cuarto is fourth. It does not get shortened. Cuarto can be feminine, cuarta, right? And fourth. So it will mean fourth in line, fourth in order. It can also mean a quarter of something, a quarter, like the fraction quarter, cuarto. Quinto is fifth. No shortening there. Quinto. And notice this looks like our word quince. This is a Latinism. It's a vestige of Latin somewhere. Quinto. And you know, quinientos for 500, right? So it doesn't look like cinco, right? Segundo doesn't look like dos, does it? But tercero still has kind of a Latin root with, you know, tres, right? Cuarto has kind of that thing, cuatro, right? The R and the T split orders. That's a little bit tricky. Quinto. Sexto, which all 15-year-olds like because it reminds them of sex. Yeah. Sexto or sexta. Séptimo, seven. No shortening there. Séptimo, séptima. Octavo, octavo. Eighth. No shortening on that one. Octavo, octava. Noveno. Noveno. Ninth. Bien. A ver, un momento. Oops. A ver. noveno and novena. Of course, it'll have a feminine form. Y décimo, 10th. Oops. 10th. Décimo, décima. So we've got two out of that group that can go to a shortened form, drop the O at the end, if they come in front of a masculine singular noun, right? Primero to primer, tercero to tercer. But all the others just stay in that form, unless you make it a feminine, if it has to be. And by the word décimo, besides meaning 10th, is something that refers to the big prize in a lottery drawing. It just is. It's kind of a long story. Décimo also, you may hear people referring to décimo, and they could be talking about lottery as well, because that term is used for that. Because it's the 10th part of a grand prize. Okay, so that's all you need to know about that. So décimo kind of looks like diez, noveno, you can see how it looks like noventa, or, octavo obviously would be an 8th type word. So the way you might hear these in feminine very frequently is with this word, vez, time. Vez is the word for time, and it means like an iteration of time. Not like what time is it, que hora es. Yeah, they use a lot of different words for time. Que hora es, what hour is it? Que hora es, right? Es tiempo de salir, it's time to leave. That's not the same kind of time. This is the time as in, I did this only one time, so I'm not very familiar with it. We go 2 times every week, that kind of time. Okay, so if somebody says, I've done this for the first time, es la primera vez que uso Zoom. Es la primera vez que uso Zoom. It's the first time I'm using Zoom. Es la quinta vez que vamos allá. Perdón. It's the 5th time we're going there, or whatever time. So you might hear it, one of these words used in a feminine form, not just referring to a person, but it's the first time, 2nd time, 3rd time, 4th time, that sort of thing. The word time, la vez, for an iteration of time, an incident in time, is a feminine word. Okay, and I can actually put that into a little slide and make sure I send that to you later with the email. ¿Bien? ¿Está bien? Bueno, fantástico. Okay, voy a preguntarles. I'm going to ask you guys, antes de practicar con reflexivos, before practicing with reflexives, do you have any questions on the little questions I sent you as prep work for speaking in smaller groups? Hay 15 preguntas. Now, these are not yes/no questions. We combined these with some interrogatives, some question words. So associated with some of these routine kind of activities, like getting up, putting on clothing, calling yourself, going to bed, brushing your teeth. We've used words like que, what, quién, who, cuándo, when, dónde, where, okay? So, okay, a ver. Hay preguntas. Are there any questions about what any of these questions mean?
No.
No? Nada? Okay. And you know that when you answer, you're going to have to insert some extra information besides the verb, right? I'm going to look at the trickiest one, which is once. Donde se duerme tu mascota might have been a little bit confusing. Where does your pet fall asleep? We all have fur babies who fall asleep in a favorite spot, sometimes inconvenient, on your computer, on the kitchen table, on your pillow, on your face when you're asleep. I don't know, on your lap, whatever. ¿Dónde se duerme tu mascota? Where does your pet fall asleep? Cuando toma una siesta, when he takes a nap or she takes a nap. Okay, so you have to give a where. You have to use the se duerme, and you might use your pet's name. You know, Fuzzy se duerme. Fluffy se duerme, lo que sea, whatever it may be, their name. Muy bien. Okay. Entonces, si no hay preguntas, if there are no questions, I'm going to put you guys into some groups. And since we've got a lot of questions, I think I'm going to try to get you as close as possible into groups of 3, 2 or 3, if I can. ¿Cuántas personas? A ver. Oh, well, maybe, okay, some will be in twos. We'll see here. Yeah, I'm going to have 2 groups of 2 and two groups of 3. Okay, muy bien. Vale, I want you to take turns. You know, one person asks a question, somebody else in the group asks the next question. So everybody take a turn, so everybody gets a chance, right? 5 minutos son suficientes. Are 5 minutes sufficient for this? O no, o más?
Más.
Sí,
Más.
más 7, quizás 7 minutos. About 7 minutes, you think?
Sí.
Okay, más o menos. 7, 8 minutos, algo así, something around there. Okay, bien. Remember, you'll have to hit the join button when you go off to practice with a partner. And if you have little questions or things that didn't go quite right or things that were hard, star it, mark it, come back, let me know, and we'll answer any of those questions. Aquí vamos. Here we go. Hit your join button. Okay, and you'll have to unmute yourselves, everybody, when you come on back in, because that's what Zoom does to us. Actually, I think I can take that off, but some people prefer to come into a meeting on mute in case there's background noise. Okay. A ver, aquí viene. Here comes everybody. Fantástico. ¿Hay alguna pregunta sobre lo que sea, about whatever? Is there any question you had with doing that practice? Nora, dime.
Yes, number 10. With this one where it was asking for the names of our children or grandchildren.
Sí, sí, sí.
You know, I answered it, yo no tengo hijos, mis sobrinos y sobrinas se llaman, and then I said their names. But my question is, why wouldn't you just say los nombres de mis sobrinos y sobrinas?
Oh, okay. A ver. So here's what you could do. As in many things in life, there is more than one way to say things. You know, I'll be honest, I think the most common thing, the most common way to ask for names is como se llaman, okay, and say here, you know, you've got more than one, whether they're nephews, nieces, you know, right? Sobrinos, sobrinas, nietos, hijos, whatever they might be. Como se llaman, and then whoever that is. You could also say, what are their names? I'll give you an example here. Okay, ¿cuáles son los nombres de sus hijos? Or tus hijos, right? Depending on if you're using your kids as familiar or formal. ¿Cuáles son los nombres means what are their names? But that would be something people would be more likely to use if they're asking like in an official capacity, like, you know, maybe you're in a customs situation coming into a country, or you're in a doctor's office. You know, you're in an office of some kind, you're filling out forms for yourself. ¿Cuáles son los nombres is kind of formal. You know, there's nothing wrong with it, but the normal conversational way to ask it would be really como se llaman, what are their names for a group. It's not to say that you can't phrase it as cuál es el nombre, but now you've got a more complicated way to ask that because you're deciding between que and cuál, right? And those are two of those tricky interrogatives, right? And your natural thing to say, what is their name? What, que? But it has to be cuál es el nombre, or cuáles son los nombres. You know, and then you got this plural cuáles here. So it's a little, you know, it's more complicated to ask that way, and it's less conversational, less just everyday kind of feel to it versus the cuáles son los nombres. ¿Sí? Pero buena pregunta, good question, because you know you can't say me llamo, my name is. You can't say mi nombre es, my name is. Soy, I am, and just give your name. All those are fine. All of those are absolutely fine ways of presenting yourself. Okay, hay otra pregunta. Any other question that you had while doing these? Or something that didn't kind of had a hitch, didn't go quite right? Nada. Perfecto. Perfecto. Oh, Marianne.
It's still back on that same question. I'm on number 10, because the way you answered that, mis hijos se llama, it's really saying my kids, they call themselves.
Eso es.
Okay, but I would normally say my children's names are.
Right.
So
Someone may respond, mis hijos son José, María, y Carlos. They might say, mis hijos son, my kids are. But
Right.
mis hijos se llaman. Yes, literally, you were saying they call themselves.
okay.
It's just, it's the phrase, it's the phrasing way that they are likely to use, but they could substitute son. Right?
Okay. That's what
What
I
are your
would,
kids'
okay.
names? Oh, they're yeah, you know, and we kind of do that too in English. So people may, in answering, you know,
Mhm.
substitute in a different verb, and that's okay. You know, this is put in there just to make you aware. Oh, you know, you
Right.
used this se llama a long time ago. Me llamo, se llama, te llamas. And look, it's coming back because this is what you're really doing. And that is formally, literally translated, that is what it means.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But I doubt that anybody in their mind is thinking, you know, like in Spanish, in that, it's just the phrase they use. Se llaman. Okay. Otra pregunta, another question. Subay, sí, dime.
13.
13.
I want to say I prefer instead of just I sit. So I say me prefiero sentar are. So I conjugate prefiero and use sentar. Is that correct?
Okay. Oh, qué interesante. Okay, take a look. And you put in prefiero, right?
Yes.
Prefiero. Okay. Puedes. Yes, you can do that. Of course. Sí, claro. Now, there are a couple things you can do there. So here's what she's doing. Some of you who are not maybe in her group are thinking, what is she doing with that? What she did was she said, I'm going to sling in a new verb here. I'm going to say, I prefer to sit down. Correcto, correct? Am I right on that? See? I prefer to sit down. And there are two things you can do. So this is actually going to bring up a very good point. Normally, if I didn't put in preferir, it would just be me siento. Me siento al aire libre. I sit outdoors, for example. Me siento. But if you want to say, I prefer to sit, okay, which is something that we often do, you know, often you're given a choice. Would you prefer indoors or outdoors, right? So you can phrase it this way. Me prefiero sentar al aire libre. And notice where that me is. Or it is equally correct to switch where that word me goes. Prefiero sentarme al aire libre. Both of those are correct. And actually, I'm glad you brought up this question. Es buena pregunta. This is a really good thing. Because I have two verbs, because Suwa used two verbs, not one, not just sentarme, but I prefer. There are two places that word may can go, but the prefiero sentar have to be positioned right next to each other. I cannot split up prefiero and sentar. They have to hold hands. They're joined. They're two verbs working together, and they are best buds, and they go walking hand in hand. So the me either comes back up in front of the conjugated verb, which is always an okay thing to do, or the me can be tagged on to the end of that second verb. Okay, it just can't become the white center of the Oreo cookie. It can't be in the middle. So, me prefiero sentar or prefiero sentarme. Los dos, correctos. Those two are correct. You can put it in front of the conjugated verb, or you can tag it onto and make it all one word with, tag it onto the end of the second verb, which is the infinitive. And both of those are correct. Now, what other ways might that come up? You could say, I'm going to sit down. And I'm going to sit becomes a two-verb phrase. That means first verb gets conjugated, second verb stays in infinitive. So I could take that same idea, but instead of preferir, I'm using ir. It could become me voy a sentar al aire libre, or voy a sentarme al aire libre. Okay? And either one is okay. But anytime you got two verbs working together, oh, otra combinación. Quiero sentarme adentro. I want to sit inside. Me quiero sentar. So when you've got two verbs working together, that me, te, nos, se can go in either place. Neither position is more correct. People often say, is one more correct? Is one more common? No, los dos, the two. People will say what they feel like. And that is what happened. Qué buena pregunta. What a good question that is. That kind of segs into what you saw with your video a little bit, kind of, sort of. Okay. Bien. ¿Hay otra pregunta o no? Is there any other question or not? Nada, nada. Okay. Vale, magnífico. I do want to take a look at, speaking of all those words shifting around, I want to bring this screen up because I believe I told you to go on off and take a look at this video, right? You remember this video? Did everybody watch that? Yeah. Okay. Now there's a reason I sent you off with that. Not all of those were reflexive. Some were not. But what it's showing you is that frequently, instead of in a conversation like you guys did, where you ask each other questions, sometimes people use these ideas as commands, orders. That sounds really strict. Somebody's giving you an order. What it just means is, instead of saying that this is happening, like, hey, we're sitting outside, come join us. We're sitting outside is really happening, right? But if somebody says, oh, sit outside, you don't want to be indoors, sit outside, the weather is great. Sit outside is not a statement of fact. Sit outside means you're telling somebody, hey, go do that. Or don't sit outside, it's going to rain. So it's a command. It can be a go do it command. We call those affirmative. It can be a don't do that command. That's called a negative command. Okay. And what she was showing you in this video is that quite often these words, me, te, nos, se, or really any kind of pronoun. So they might be not reflexive objects. They might be indirect objects. They might be direct objects. Any of those pronouns, if you use it with a go do it, an affirmative command, they get tagged onto the end. And it's the opposite of what we've been trying to drill into you guys, right? Me siento aquí, I'm sitting here. That's not a command. Sit here, siéntate aquí, siéntate aquí. Okay, so all these things you saw on her board, espérate is just kind of like saying, wait up, right? But espérame is wait for me, right? Relájate means relax, just, right? Relájate. Relajarse, relajarse is a reflexive verb, to relax oneself, to get yourself Yeah, in that Zen kind of mind frame, right? So if somebody tells you to relax, they might say it, there are different verbs for it, they might say it as relájate. And they tag the te onto the end. The reason these have the me, te, nos tagged onto the end is that they are commands. When you have an affirmative command, just be aware we have to tag it onto the end. We can't put it up in front. That's just the way they say it. Now, oddly, a negative command will swing the pronoun back in front of the verb. Like you did with your questions. Negative commands force you to put the pronoun back in front of the verb. But affirmative commands must get tagged on the end. You don't get a choice of where they go. So let's look at the second one she had there. Espérame means wait for me. Espérame, wait for me. If I tell you don't wait for me, don't wait. You just keep going, right? Sometimes you do that. Oh, don't wait for me, right? The me will swing back up front, and the command will change a little bit, so don't worry about that part. But here it would be. Here's how it would sound. No me esperes. No me esperes. Don't wait for me. No me esperes.
You don't wait.
Don't wait for me. No me esperes. But espérame. Espérame. Okay. No me esperes. Let's look at number 4 is really popular with little kids. Cállate means shut up. Literally, callarse means to make yourself quiet. It's just the way they say that. So we use that in the, now, and I want to preface this. I know in the educational world, certainly in the business world, you know, you don't say to business associates, shut up. You might say, be quiet, you know. Shut up has a very negative connotation in English. It doesn't necessarily have as negative a connotation in Spanish, right? You know, although, you know, cállate, of course, would have some authority there. Cállate, be quiet. Siéntate, you often, you know, you walk into a restaurant, they might do it as a formal commando, siéntese, siéntese, have a seat. So know that when they tag those things on the end, they're telling you, go do it, please. Go do it, please, okay? Kind of related to that idea of cállate, when you tell somebody to get lost, go away. Basically, ¿cuál es el número? Es número 8, number 8 on her list. Vete, vete, get out, leave, go away, go away, go away, vete, right? Váyanse, hey, you guys, get out of here. Váyanse, váyanse, okay? Váyanse. Those are commands. And ir looks funny with these commands, except for vamos. Vamos looks pretty normal, right? Vamos, let's go. But vete, hey, move, go away. Váyanse, go away. And the let's go, meaning let's get out of here, let's leave, is vámonos. What happens is that vamos, let's do it, right? We take the S off of vamos and we tag the nos onto the end. So if you want to say literally that we are leaving this place, like let's get out of here. It's not vámonos, but vámonos. It's just what they do. We take off the S from vamos and vámonos. That is a really, really commonly heard thing. You know, you're done with dinner, you're done with lunch, and it's kind of time to get moving on. And you say, oh, well, let's get out of here. Vámonos. Vámonos. Okay.
Pregunta.
Sí, sí.
On ocho, if the shopkeeper didn't want you to leave, so the can you do that in the negative? Like,
Sure.
or they're trying to,
yes.
instead of shoo you out, keep you there.
Yeah, they're trying to shoo you out, right? Like, you know, they've got to shut up there, or something bad happened. They need you to leave because, I don't know, something has to be cleaned up, whatever. If it's to one person, because this is formal, not formal, right? No se vaya, or well, yeah, don't go. No se vaya. Actually, this is a pretty common command. Yeah, don't leave. No se vaya, no se vayan, for if there are two of you or more. No se vayan. Oh, no se vayan, no se vayan. Don't take off yet. Don't feel you must go. No se vayan. No se vaya. Muy común, very, very common. For a friend, no te vayas. No te vayas. I know this is, the two commands are sticky, so I don't want to get into that yet. But the two command to get out is vete, and ve sounds very different than no vayas. Two commands change pretty drastically from affirmative to negative. Usted commands do not change drastically from affirmative to negative, but two commands do change drastically from affirmative to negative. So, no te vayas, don't go. No se vaya, en una tienda, in a store, no se vayan. Qué buena pregunta, Tomás. Me gusta muchísimo. Gracias. Bueno, otras preguntas. Any others? No? Nada? Nada? Okay. So just know, when they get tagged on the end, there's a reason for that. They're telling you, please go do it. Okay? Vale. There are certain situations where we can tag those pronouns, or even have to tag those pronouns on. You have to tag the pronoun on if you give an affirmative command. But the example that Suwai asked about, where she joined two verbs together, prefiero sentar, voy a sentar, quiero sentar. Those, you have a choice. The pronoun comes up in front of the conjugated verb, or it gets tagged on to the end of the infinitive. And either way is okay. ¿Vale? ¿Bien?
Sí.
Okay. Una cosita más. I want to talk about one more thing, and then I want to introduce something. I believe I gave you, correct me if I am wrong. I also gave you this little video to watch, right? This one, see, yeah, okay. And he talked about all of these, and I'm just gonna put this up. The most common way you hear this is maybe not the como se escribe, but como se dice, como se dice, como se dice. There is another thing about that word say that we need to address. And that is that sometimes say truly is not reflexive. Say is a very multi-purpose word. So say can be a super confusing word. Let's take a quick look at that. And we're going to talk about why it's so stinking confusing. Okay, a ver. So you've got this say, this reflexive thing you've been using. We've also got, sorry guys, I don't know what happened there. It had a technology blip. We've also got this word say. This word say means, I know. It sounds exactly like this. They sound exactly identical to him or herself, right? Right? Se llama, se llaman, se levanta, se sienta. This se does not sound at all different from this se. Son pronunciaciones idénticas. They are identical pronunciations, but sometimes you need to know that this word se just means I know. I mean, in writing, you can immediately see that it's the verb thing. And the reason that se gets an accent mark is so that you know, hey, this one's a verb. It's the I know verb, yo sé, because we don't say sabo, I know. We say se. You would think saber becomes sabo, but it does not. Sabo won't register at all. If you say that to somebody, they'll think that is a really weird thing to say. Okay, yo sé, and often, you know, it's used as yo sé or lo sé. Lo sé, I know it. Lo sé, I know it. I know, lo sé. I know it. Whatever the it is. Lo sé. Lo sé. If you want to say, I already know it. Ya lo sé. Or ya la. Ya lo sé. Ya lo sé. I already know it. Ya lo sé. Ya lo sé. So that's, you know, here are the many, many flavors of se. Se is to himself, herself, with all those reflexives. Se can mean I know. Se can also mean, in certain instances, it is called the se impersonal. And that means impersonal se. And that means it's kind of like our English way of saying you without you do something. Or in the idea of not you, the person, like you, I'm looking at you, but oh, you say it this way, se dice. Oh, ¿cómo se dice cell phone? ¿Cómo se dice cell phone? How do you say cell phone? Se dice celular. You say celular. Not you, the person, but you, any old you. Okay, so se can mean any old you, right? Or in a formal sense, one says celular. But in English, it's not very common for us really to express that idea as one says celular. You say cellular. That's what we do, you know, celular. You as any old person, you know, anywhere, that kind of you, the impersonal you, okay? It can also be expressed as the idea of one does something. But that sounds pretty darn formal to our English ears. Okay, so let's look at what are some ideas of ways that might be used. You kind of saw that video on it. We might use that as, we might use it with this verb cerrar. So I'm thinking of some really common ways we use this se as the impersonal. We might want to say, not literally you close the store, but the store closes at. The store closes at. The store closes at 8. The store closes at 8. Okay, and you're just saying it's like a fake passive voice. The store doesn't really close anything, but the store closes up, right? Se cierra. That would be expressed as se cierra la tienda. Se cierra a las 8. It closes at 8. Se cierra. You know, in English, people might say, oh, we close. The store owner might say we close at 8 o'clock. But in Spanish, it's going to be much more common to say se cierra a las 8. because it's an impersonal thing. You're talking about the whole building being closed, right? Conversely, we can use abrir, open, and that is a really common way they use this word se. El correo, post office. El correo. Se abre a las 9. Se abre a las 9. It opens at 9. Se abre a las 9. So you hear that se abre to say that a building opens up, or se cierra, it closes up, right? Se dice, really, really common. One says, se habla español, the late night commercials that come on, you know, the lawyers who come on with the little commercials at night, se habla español. Spanish is spoken. It's like a passive voice. Spanish is spoken. They might want to say, volar, to fly. I'm going to pick an airline. Aer Lingus se vuela a Irlandia. Aer Lingus flies to Ireland. But it's impersonal, right? It's not just like a human being doing it. The example he gave, I believe, is no se come, no se come. You don't eat that thing, right? No se come. No se come means you don't eat it, meaning like nobody would do that. Yeah. And the really, really famous thing people use for protests, not even just for protests, any old situation. If somebody wants to say, hey, yes, you can, sí se puede. Sí se puede es una frase muy popular. This is a really popular phrase. Sí se puede. Well, sure you can. Sí se puede. Yes, you can. Se puede, meaning not just you, that one person, anybody can. Oh, sí se puede. Puedo ver. Can I see this stuff? Oh, sí se puede. Yeah, you can. Okay, so that se is really, really common to talk about in an impersonal, in a like a passive voice kind of manner. Yeah. Okay.
Tengo pregunta.
Sí, Suwai, dime.
When we use say impersonal, the verb, is it always conjugated at third party singular and the third party plural and not anything else?
Okay, qué buena pregunta. What a good question. Okay, vamos a ver. Let's take a look at that. I'm going to give you a rule of thumb. Set when it's used as a passive voice or as the impersonal you, it'll always be used in one of two combinations, and I'll put them in here. Se abre, se abren. It'll be one of those two. It's third person singular or third person plural. I would say this is, whoops, I don't have the, I changed my Spanish keyboard, so I don't have the right things. This one is, I would say, a little more common. The se abre is perhaps a bit more common, but it could be se abren. Okay, and I'll give you a couple of examples. You're asking because you've got to get into the post office and, el correo, the person responds to you. Sí, se abre a las 9. Se abre a las 9. It opens at 9. But maybe you're talking about all the shops in a downtown district. You might say something like this. Las tiendas. If I'm talking about more than one building, right? Las tiendas se abren a las 10. They open at 10. So it might be used as se abren if I'm talking about more than one thing, like tiendas. Okay. But if you're talking about a onesie kind of thing, like el correo, the post office, then it will be se abre. I think you hear se abre a little bit more, but it really depends on the situation. It depends on the thing you're referring to. It could be se abre, it could be se abren, but it's never used with yo. This kind of se is never used with yo. It's never used with nosotros. It's not used with tú. Okay. It's always as that thing opens, that thing closes. Those things, they open up. Oh, los museos se cierran. Oh, the museums close on Sundays, or the museums close on Mondays, right? Se cierran los museos los lunes. They close the museums on Mondays. Okay, bien. So the way you use that is always with an él, ella, usted verb or an ellos, ellas, ustedes verb. Y depende. Depends a little bit, right? Sí. Bien. Qué buena pregunta. Gracias. ¿Hay más preguntas? Sí, no, sí, no. Okay, bien. So just so you know, when you hear say, it won't always be reflexive. It might be that impersonal. It might be used as a command, which, well, okay. Still maybe a reflexive with that, but anyways. Okay. A ver. We're going to take a look at something. Oh, and by the way, actually, yeah, I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of homework. I'm going to show you where in the book. En el libro. We're going to open up. We've used a lot of these pronouns, but we're going to introduce another set of pronouns, which you've actually used a little bit. Just didn't talk about it as much. En la página 160, 163, 163, 163. La lista. They give you the list on the bottom half of that page. And you'll notice I am not starting you at the beginning of the chapter. I'm starting you right in the middle of the chapter. No es lógico. It's not logical, but it is. These pronouns are used in a lot of different ways. And we're going to use the less complicated way to introduce it, not the more complicated. These are pronouns you have used with gustar to say you like something, but we use them with a lot of different verbs. I am going to show you a screen now, and you don't need to copy these because what I'm going to give you next is a cheat sheet. Yay! It's a cheat sheet. And you're going to get this in the email, so don't feel you have to copy any of it down. We're just going to today explain and show examples of why we use it. ¿Pueden ver? Can you see? ¿Lo pueden ver? Can you see it? Lo pueden ver. Magnífico. Okay, a ver. This is a cheat sheet. It's called IODO. IODO means indirect object, direct object. And this is something that kind of gets people messed up a little bit, but we're going to unmess it for you. This is a cheat sheet which might be helpful. These are pronouns we've used a little bit. We're going to kind of review them. These are direct object pronouns. I can probably put a little less space in there so that when you print it out, it doesn't have gobs and gobs of space. So our pronouns are me, te. Wow, does that look familiar? Nos. You'll notice, and this os one, of course, is only used in Spain. These are direct objects. Notice, me, te, nos is always me, te, nos. If whoever receives the action is me, te, or nos, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to know what kind of object it is. You don't need to know. reflexive, direct, indirect. You don't need to know. Metenos is always metenos, yay. But the part that gets some people messed up are these stinkers here, right? Direct objects are words like it or them, lo or los. La, if it's feminine, or las, feminine plural, okay? And these are direct. So the metenos is not hard, but por ejemplo, tienes los libros, you have the books, tienes los libros, I'm going to take this off for just a moment. Tienes los libros, ah, sí, los tengo, them I have, los tengo. Claro, los tengo, of course I have it, claro, los tengo, I have them. Bien, sí. A ver, ok, otro ejemplo. M&M's, dulces, los dulces. ¿Quieres los dulces? Oh, sí, los quiero, I want them. Los quiero, them I want. Oh, sí, los quiero. A ver, ok, otro ejemplo. ¿Dónde está? Now, I'm going to show you a bunch of things, but do we call these generally bills or just money? Are you likely to say just money? Dinero, right, okay. So you think, dinero. Dinero is a singular thing, just like we say money. You don't say I have them, you say I have it, right? Money, dinero. Dinero, sí lo tengo. ¿Tienes dinero? Do you have some money? ¿Tienes dinero? Ah, sí lo tengo. Bien, ok, vale, momentito. Ok, a ver. ¿Dónde están? Oh, sí, monedas, coins, right? Centavos, but monedas, coins, ¿sí? ¿Quieres monedas? Do you want some coins? And because monedas is feminine, it becomes las. To say, I have them. What do you have? I have them. Las tengo. ¿Quieres monedas? Sí, las quiero. Yeah, I don't want bills. I want some money change. You know, you need coins for laundry. You need coins for bus fares, something like that. If they don't take a telephone. Sí, las quiero. I want them. Las, because monedas, feminine, and more than one of them. Sí, las quiero. I want them. Okay. A ver, magnífico. Okay, ¿entienden? Understand? So the metenos is not hard, but the lo, la, los, las, that you got to think about kind of hard. Okay, we're going to add to this mix something that you've actually seen before. It's called an indirect object. Now, indirect objects, these receive the action, they don't do the action, just like direct objects receive the action, they don't do the action. But we translate indirect objects generally with the idea of to somebody. This is being done to me, like he says something to me, he says something to them, he tells them, he tells her. Okay. Indirect objects can often be translated as to somebody or for somebody. Not always, but often. All right. Indirect objects always represent a person receiving action. If I want to talk about somebody getting candy, it's not a human being. But if I want to say somebody tells you a joke, right? They're telling you, you are the human being. Indirect object. This is kind of a stinky thing people don't like to talk about. Yeah. Un ejemplo. The indirect object always represents a person, not a thing. Often the indirect object gets the direct object, but you can read that later. Here they are. Here's what we want to introduce in the time we have left. Me, te, and nos, and that word us, always the same. Yay! They don't change, they don't change, they don't change. Oops, that's why they had to be upset all this. Me, te, nos, me, te, nos. You don't have to think, but here's where this becomes kind of a problem. These two words, le and les, and you hear le and les in Spanish a lot. You know that little phrase, ándale, ándale. They like to use in Mexico, ándale. Ándale is like, move it. Get moving, ándale. Get going, get going. In Mexico in particular, they like tagging on le to lots of things. Instead of, and I'm gonna fast rewind here. Instead of lo or la, masculine, feminine, an indirect object has no gender. It's just le. Le can mean to or for him, to or for her, to or for you if it's the formal you, usted, okay? And instead of lo or los or las, we have les. Again, no gender assigned to it. Les can mean to them, all gals. Les can mean to them, all guys. To them, mixed group. To you guys, a ustedes. Okay? Me, te, nos, le, or les. These are called indirect object pronouns. Okay. Yeah. Let me take that off for now because you've got kind of an assignment tagged onto that, and I'll show you how you're going to do that later. Okay. You can't use indirect objects with every single verb. Like estudiar. You don't study to somebody, right? You study a thing. This can only be paired up with a direct object. You study something. Estudio español, lo estudio. I study it. Estudio matemáticas, las estudio. I study them. I know, because it's maths. It's that British concept of maths instead of math. Las estudio. Las for matemáticas, right? I can't really use a metenos les with this. It does not correspond to an indirect object. Yeah, it just doesn't. Por ejemplo, and what we're just kind of pointing out is that some verbs will only take a direct object. Comprender. Oh, sí, comprendo la idea. I understand. Comprendo la idea. La comprendo. Or lo comprendo, right? Or no los comprendo. If we're los problemas, no los comprendo. I don't understand them. No los comprendo. I don't understand them, the problems. Los stands in for los problemas, okay? Okay, so. Bien. What are the common verbs that will take indirect objects? Okay. Decir. And you know, this might be easier to do if I put it on the screen. What will be typical things that will very obviously use indirect objects? Actions that will use indirect objects because you do something to somebody or for somebody. Decir. To tell. To say. There's probably the number one verb, decir. All right. No me mi amigo no me dice nada. Mi amigo no me dice nada. My friend doesn't tell me anything. Mi amigo no le dice nada. My friend doesn't tell him anything. Doesn't tell her anything. Decir uses me, que, nos, le, and les a lot. Because you tell something to somebody. Or you say something to somebody. Bien? Pagar. To pay will often use an indirect object pronoun because you pay a sum to somebody. Tengo que pagarle. I have to pay him. Voy a pagarle. I'm going to pay him. Le pago ahora. I'm paying him now. I'm paying her now. Le pago might mean I'm paying him. I'm paying her. Either one. Los dos. Either one. Costar. Let's stay on that money thing. Money theme. Costar. Me cuesta. Me cuesta. It costs me. Le cuesta. It costs him, or it costs her, or it costs you. Le cuesta. Nos cuesta. It costs us a certain amount. Bien? Traer. Traer, to bring. You bring something to somebody. Really, really common. Bien? A ver. Explicar. To explain. Because you explain something to somebody. Right? Enseñar. To teach. And sometimes this is used with show. And I'll give you the other verb for show. Mostrar. That's just show. Enseñar, mostrar. You teach something to a person. You show something to a person. Contar. Contar can mean to count. But when you use it as in to tell a story, a joke, telling something, it's kind of a synonym for decir, except instead of, like you might use decir just with information or tell the truth or tell a lie. But contar has more the idea of like a story, like there's a long bit of information you have to relate. It's kind of involved. That's contar. Contar. Okay? Sometimes we use this with comprar, to buy, because you buy something for somebody. Le compro un regalo de cumpleaños a mi cuñada. I'm buying my sister-in-law a birthday present. Le compro un regalo de cumpleaños a mi cuñada. Because you're doing that for somebody. Pedir, to ask for. And that idea of for is built in. You don't need the word for because it's built into the verb. Le pido. Le pido. I'm asking him for. I'm asking her for something. Le pido un favor. Le pido un favor. I'm asking him for a favor. Les pido dinero. I'm asking them for money. Bien. Okay. Often, this verb hablar. Hablar, which means to speak or to talk, because you speak to somebody or you talk to somebody. Okay. Dar, to give. Muy obvio, really, really obvious. Okay. Les doy un regalo. I'm giving them a gift. Le doy un regalo. I'm giving her a gift. A ver, okay. I'm going to give you, ¿cuántos más? Prestar. Prestar, to loan or lend. Le presto mi lápiz. I'm loaning him my pen. Les presto dinero. I'm loaning them some money. Y enviar. To send. Yeah, you send somebody a gift, you send them an email, you send them a message. Okay. And there are a ton of these. As I had comprar, I could have the opposite, which is vender, to sell. Because you sell something to somebody, right? We'll add one more. Escribir. Escribir, to write. Because you might write, again, something, an email to somebody. See? Un texto, a text. Lo que sea, whatever it is that you write. Bien? Okay. A ver. So, certain verbs lend themselves to those indirect objects. Muy fantástico. I will ask you to take a look. Your book is going to give you a whole list too. En las páginas 164, 165, 164 and 165, the pages after just the list of pronouns. It will say, here are a whole bunch of verbs. Oh, and I think they only added about 2 more, preguntar and contestar. A whole bunch of verbs that these are commonly used with. The me, te, nos, le, and les. Okay, the kinds of verbs. And then they're going to show you, after that list of verbs, en la página 165 and 165, they're going to show you how, again, where they go in the sentence will follow the same patterns as the me, te, nos, lo, la, los, las. It follows, and the same pattern as the reflexives. Where they go in the sentence follows the exact same patterns. In front of the verb, in front of the verb, in front of the verb. They're going to show you that in front of the verb. 165, 165. 166, 166. They're going to show you all of that. So you're going to read, quite a few chunks of text here with a whole bunch of different examples using that. Okay, but we're going to address, you're not going to do exercises in the book yet. We're going to address one thing. 2 things before we send you off for the day. When you get this list, this will be part of your homework. When you get this list, this is your cheat sheet. It's got the directs and it's got the indirects, these new ones. These are the ones we're really going to focus on. It's going to have a whole list of sentences, great big spaces in between. And the great big spaces, somewhere in those great big spaces, you've got to figure out where to put a pronoun. So you may want to take, I'm just going to show you what I would do. You may want to put a great big X. Stick a great big X where that pronoun should go in each sentence. Because it might be me, te, nos, le, or les, right? Could be 5 different things. So I want you to figure out where you're going to put your X. Kind of use that as a way of figuring out where does it go. And again, it's going to follow the same pattern that you're used to with reflexives, that you're used to with direct objects, okay? For each sentence, I want you to create a new one, sticking either a me, a te, a nos, a le, or a les in there, according to what makes sense, right? So let's look at the first one. Las amigas hablan mañana. The friends are talking tomorrow. Maybe you want to say the friends are talking to us. To us will become nos. Yes, sí, exacto. Okay. So I want you to invent a new sentence for each one of these. And it's going to go on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 of these. I want you to like create a new sentence and say that somebody is doing something to somebody else. And there are various combinations that are possible. Okay, son posibles. So that's what we're going to do. So that's thing number 1 that I have to advise you on. So when you get the cheat sheet, I want you to print that whole thing out and just figure out where will the pronoun go, and then like invent a new sentence. All right. Yeah. Okay. The second thing I want you to think about is that, and this is something that, shall we call this redundant? Sure, we can. I want to show you something special, or perhaps annoying, about these 2 little words, le and les. Because le and les means so many different things, right? Le can mean to him, to her, to you, a usted. Les can mean to them, like any combination of them, guys, gals, mixed group, or ustedes, right? You guys, it can mean the plural, you. Le and les are fuzzy in meaning, okay? Usually, the le and the les can stand alone because in the context of a conversation, you know who the person is referring to. But if you're not quite clear, or if the speaker thinks perhaps it is not quite clear who they're referring to with that word le and les, you may have le and the verb, and it may end up with an Luis. It might end up with Maria. It might end up with an usted. So in other words, you may hear people adding on an extra phrase. And that extra with a name tells you who we mean by that word le. Because le can mean so many different people, if you need to make it specific, if you think it's not clear, you may hear people adding on the phrase. This is called a clarifying phrase. I don't care that you know that. But know that when people add on an they're just defining who they mean by le. Similarly with les, people will have les with the verb. And if they're not sure that you understand who they mean, it might be a los hijos. It might be Beto y Guillermo, right? It might be ustedes. So that little phrase is sometimes used to clarify who we mean by les if the speaker thinks it might not be clear who I'm referring to by using this word les. Now, some people, English speakers, will frequently say, that's redundant. If I want to say, I'm telling him, Luis, I have to say the Luis. Well, you don't have to. You should if you think it's not clear to the person you're speaking to. If from context it's clear, leave the le alone. But if it's not clear from context, you might want to insert a phrase. So people will do that frequently if they just want to make sure you know for sure, oh, this is who I mean. So that redundant phrase, it is the with the name is redundant, but it just clearly defines who we mean by le or who we mean by les. That's all it does. So you may hear people throw that in, para que sepan, just so you know. Está bien? We're good with that? Bien? Okay. I'm going to have you reading all those examples in the book. I'm going to have you trying that out a little bit with some phrases. And we're going to come in next week and practice that a little bit more in speaking situations. Yeah, I think I will send you a little, it's like some skeletal sentences that you can fill in with partners for practice on this as you go along. ¿Hay alguna pregunta antes de salir? Before we leave, is there any kind of question you have about this? No? Okay. Excelente. So that will be, I think, enough, because conceptually, this tends to be a little bit tough. I'll probably find a video on this for you to watch, just so you hear more examples, because the more examples you hear, the more comfortable you get. So I'll send out a video for you. I don't think I want to send an extra reading. I think that will be overkill, because we want to focus on this one idea, because you're going to hear that word le all the time, and it's good to know how we use it right. Bien? Okay, vale. Eso y todo. That's it. Fantástico, ¿verdad? Si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta durante la semana, if you have some kind of question during the week, sí, por favor, envíenme la pregunta. Send me the question if you get stuck or hung up on something this week. ¿Vale? Okay? Magnífico. Entonces, eso es todo. That's it. I don't want to keep people too long. I only went 5 minutes over. I'm getting better. Okay. Eso es todo. Que tengan buena semana. Have a really good week. And if you want to say